Peace, everybody. My name is Stephanie Jack. Please let me know if you can hear me well or if I need to adjust anything. Today is October 14th, 2020. This is my very first Rose Golden Hour of the live series that's going on until December 30th. So I'm happy to have anyone here listening to me now, whoever's going to listen for the playback, and anyone that comes across my videos in the future. I am a mother, I am a birth worker, I am an activist, I am many things, and I'm grateful to have you. Words that I describe myself, I consider myself a lover, someone that's open to connecting with others, and I am a healer, meaning that I am ever changing. This live is about childbirth trauma awareness. I have 2 children. I have a 4-year-old, he will be 5 tomorrow, and I have a 10-month-old daughter and a almost 5-year-old son. I want to share about my birth experience with my son because it was very memorable, and it is one of the reasons why I have chosen to be a birth worker. And so I'm just going to go off my notes, have a little notebook here with questions to kind of keep me going, so bear with me. Here we go. So what is considered birth trauma? I would say birth trauma is any instance where you are not prepared. You can even be prepared, but for the most part, is that you experience a physical, mental, emotional disconnect where you are not heard, you are not validated in your experience having a child, and you can experience very huge physical, emotional pain that can trigger you into your postpartum phase and beyond. I know that there's like a specific definition for it, but that's what I have considered childbirth trauma for myself. I've experienced physical pain during my birth with my son, and I've experienced emotional and spiritual pain during my pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. What makes a birth experience difficult? I would say birth experiences can be difficult if the support is not there. Support can be multiple people in your life. It doesn't necessarily have to be the person you had your child with. It could be the people that you're living with. It could be how society views you during pregnancy as a woman or human being, birthing person. Financial struggles make things difficult for sure. Speaking to my personal experience, I had my son when I was 19 years old. I was living with my mother and my 2 brothers, 2 of my brothers at the time. And I had finished attempting life as a college student. I didn't do well, came home, did a year, was very successful at home, but I couldn't afford classes, and I kind of decided to just jump into the 9 to 5. When I was pregnant, there was a lot going against me at the time. It was like I was working, trying to prove that, I could take care of this baby. And I used to walk to work. I used to walk to down a whole road away from my apartment. And I was living with my mom. In the beginning, she was not too happy to hear that her daughter, firstborn, supposed to be this one that's going to do differently than everyone else in the family. It was heartbreaking to hear when you had all these dreams and visions for your child to do something that you felt wasn't the right thing. There was conversations about abortion. There were conversations about, doing things that I may not have wanted to do. So it was a lot on my plate at the time. The situation triggered depression, which I didn't know I had growing up anyway as an adolescent. And that experience was difficult, to say the least. And I was long distance from my partner also. Financially, I had my mom, thankfully, to provide, have a roof over my head. But as to saving up and providing for a kid, I wasn't necessarily ready in some ways. And I had no idea what was going on inside my body. I did take classes. I did, do all the little research, had the apps. But for the most part, I didn't really know, if that makes sense. And when you're in birth with that type of support where there really isn't any, um, it can make birth traumatic. And so, what determines how a person will feel? That can be the length of labor, however long mom decides her body decides to labor and baby. It can make you feel that things aren't going the way that they're supposed to, or the pain itself can be overwhelming to be consistently experiencing contractions. And in my situation, I chose pain medications, and the contractions were so strong, and my son being the size that he was, the numbing medication didn't help. And that's all it did, was really slow me down and make me extremely tired. So I wanted to give up anyway. Um, the use of pain meds can determine how you feel, because a lot of times moms want to go natural, or they want to do things based on how their body wants to. And then if you are coerced or persuaded or, pushed to take medication, or you just up and decide to, it can make you feel a number of things. I know that I hadn't really thought too much about it. I just felt like, oh, if it's going to numb me, okay. I mean, I know I kind of wanted to walk around and experience this, but I trust my providers. I trust the hospital. I don't really question too much, and I'm sure it'll be okay. Medical interventions. During my birth, I had epidurals. I had, I think they call it bolsters. I had 2 doses of the epidural. I had general anesthesia. I had a number of things. And the medication didn't necessarily help. The type of delivery. I had a vaginal birth with my son, and I did tear. The physical pain of it all, it felt like I couldn't escape it. I was not breathing. I felt that, other people that were there supporting me. Mind you, I had my mom, my dad, my grandma. And if you have families that are, to a certain extent, dysfunctional and they don't really get along, or there's a lot there, and I'm the person wanting to have everybody all of a sudden bond during this birthing experience, but nobody knows how I want to be supported and how I want to be treated in that space. At the same time, I had my son at Memorial Hermann downtown, off of Fannin. I'm in Houston, by the way. I had my son at a teaching hospital, so every prenatal appointment I had a different person. Never knew who was going to help deliver my baby. So if you can imagine having a fleet of students, nurses, multiple people coming into the room at once, wanting to learn about your vagina and learning about your baby and experiencing all these different things, it was a lot to deal with. Yeah. When I gave birth to my son, and as he was literally coming out and I tore, which I mentioned before, in the postpartum, after delivering the placenta, there was an aspect where they were going to do, where they would sew me up due to me tearing, and they did not numb that area. So I remember myself kicking the nurses and doctors that were trying to stitch me up, because they either didn't give a damn, they either felt that because I'm black, I don't feel pain, maybe my skin isn't sensitive, who knows what the mindset was, but I was not expecting to feel that, and it's something that kind of stuck with me. Childbirth can also be sudden. Did things happen quickly? Yes, in a lot of ways, because the way that I found out that I was going to have my child was not a normal situation. Towards the third trimester, I was sleeping a lot. Like, I would go to work, I would be so exhausted, I would come home, get in the bed, and sleep literally until the next evening. So I was doing a lot of like sleeping spells, and it was strange to me, but I just continuously felt sleepy for some reason. And so I ended up waking up. There was a phone call for Medicaid transportation to come pick me up to take me to the hospital. And I went to the appointment. Everything was great. It seemed like everything was normal. And they were ready to discharge me and have me leave to go home. As I'm packing things up, walking out of the space, they're saying, "Oh no, we don't want you to leave. You're gonna actually have your baby now. We found protein in your urine, which is a symptom of preeclampsia." And they told me that I had to have my baby today. I had no idea what that meant. I was like feeling like the world was ending and I was in imminent danger was my initial feelings, which is strange because you're supposed to feel calm, at ease, like everything is fine. The doctor's office and the hospital are connected by a bridge, and so they told me to just basically walk across this bridge to the hospital and go get admitted into the hospital. I remember having to call my partner, call all of my family members, some family members that were my dad's side, but these people hadn't really seen me on a day-to-day basis. But of course I wanted to notify them of, where I'm at and what I'm experiencing. I believe my mom was working, my partner was working. Everybody had to get off and all come to the same place where I was. So if you can imagine, that was very scary for me. I remember walking to the labor and delivery area. I could have sworn that I had taken a hospital tour, but it looked so different in the moment. And I had to wait, and there were so many other moms in labor, like pushing, ready to push their babies out, sitting in different seating on the outside of labor and delivery. They went ahead and sent me in, luckily, to my own room, and they just gave me a gown, told me to change, and I was pretty much alone for however many hours until my family decided to show up. So I'm just in this room, I'm feeling normal, and it was crazy. Let's see. Did birth change from fine to dangerous? So as I said before, I had preeclampsia. There was no way to determine that I had it because my blood pressure was fine. I didn't really show any issues with my overall health except for being anemic and having very low iron levels. And the only cure for preeclampsia is to literally deliver your baby. The times where it was dangerous was the fact that during the hours that I was laboring, I had experienced my blood pressure to be so high. And the reason why was because I was high on the pain medication. And I was acting a fool with the gas mask on. I remember joking and talking with my partner, listening to my mom and my dad and my grandmother having conversation, and that being awkward as hell. And then I decide to joke with my partner, and my blood pressure is like escalating to the point where the nurse comes in and they're like, "Hey, if y'all cannot get her to stop laughing and y'all kind of like keep things down, we're going to have everybody leave because I'm at risk of having seizures." So that was the first thing that was like, oh, wow, we need to like really chill. The other aspect was after having my son, I had extreme blood loss to the point where they needed to give me blood transfusions. I do not currently have my birth records, which I am in the process of getting very soon, to really see what exactly happened. because a lot of times, especially with C-section moms, um, things may be different on your birth record than you remember or what they may have told you. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, so that was the only other time where it was like dangerous in the fact that my health was at risk and not baby. He was surprisingly, he wasn't a concern at first because when he came out, he had been given all of the drugs that I had been given. It was transferred from me to him. And so when he came out, he was high. He was asleep. He didn't really want to wake up. And it made everyone in the room alarmed because they just kind of took him away and went to assess what was happening with him. I remember seeing him in the distance and them trying to shake him awake. And at the same time, they're trying to clean me up, get everything as far as the placenta and any additional recovery care they needed to do immediately right in that moment. I was so out of it. I wasn't really concerned about him. I had just delivered him, and it was just kind of like, oh my God, I'm so glad it's over. And, you know, how can I, get to feeling good again? I see my mom in the distance getting on one knee. The only time you should ever get on one knee is if you know for sure your baby's like gone. But I saw that and I remember just saying like, mom, is my baby okay? And no one not really responding back to me. Because my partner was over there with the baby. I couldn't really talk to him and have him bring me that information. It was kind of like me just seeing what I could see from the positioning that I was in. Did you feel disconnected from what was happening? To a certain extent, yes, because when you are, or for me, I was unaware of what my body physically went through those months of carrying my son up until birth. I was unaware. And the pain that I had experienced, it was a lot to just really register. And for a while, because I decided to do gender reveal. So mind you, this is 2015 before a lot of the people I know now who have children and are doing gender reveals. I decided, I was going to do this. And I found out the gender. And I was very adamant on having a daughter. And my reactions to having a son, surprisingly, were like grief and like, why am I having a boy? What can I do for a son? What can I, how am I going to be a good mom to to a boy? Which is really strange now, real foolish now, of course. But in those moments, I had these ideas of this daughter that I wanted to control and recreate a happier version of life for her because of whatever I may have felt in my experience of growing up. And I know for a fact I would be a completely different person if that was the case. With my son, it was like I was thinking a little bit too hard. And once he came, it was like I didn't necessarily feel that immediate connection, but I knew he was mine, of course. But it was kind of like getting used to him and us having our connection and rhythm and how we do things. It was so new to me, I didn't really know. It just seemed like a stranger they had brought in and was like, here you go. This is what you take care of. Do a great job. Did anyone have time to explain anything that was happening to you? For the most part, no. I remember, if you want to backtrack a little bit with me, because I think I was 37 weeks pregnant and I was having my baby sooner than due date. They wanted to induce me. They had a balloon that they wanted to put up there. And the guy that was doing it, he wasn't really concerned about my discomfort. And of course that shit hurt. And so it was like I was going to kick him until he understood to get back, it felt horrible to feel somebody try to like stretch your cervix and assess something and force your labor to happen. For me, it was very painful. With my daughter, it was horrible. I had a nurse just kind of shove her hand up there and it triggered contractions. So I had already had emotional stress from those feelings that came up in my second birth. But as far as my son, there was not really anything that I could just really remember. And I think because I was not prepared, like now as a birth worker, I do birth and postpartum planning sessions where I talk to my clients about, what to expect and what to do in these different situations. And I didn't get that. And I think part of it was because of me not knowing, my support at the time not knowing, and this was just the care that I was given based on what I allowed to happen. Now, as a birth worker, I know that regardless of the health insurance that I have, I deserve top-notch care since you're getting paid regardless. And yeah, childbirth can be overwhelming. Did you feel swept away by the hospital routine? Yes, because there wasn't a good enough transfer from regular doctor's appointment to you're about to have a baby today. There wasn't enough, like, these are the different scenarios that will happen. And I feel like obstetric tries to make themselves seem so top notch in their quality of care, but there is not enough. I wouldn't even just say bedside manner, because even in the physical space, when you're giving me pain medication, when you are sewing me up, when you are telling me the status of myself and my child, you are supposed to explain things, and not just on a scientific level, not just on a dumbed down level. It needs to be where both parties understand what's happening, both parties have the ability to speak, and the client that you're operating on needs to feel confident in what's about to happen to them. I feel like, paychecks and insurance bills and all those things matter more than people, in my opinion, in how our society treats hospitals. So yes, I felt swept away by the routine. I felt swept away by the postpartum aspect, because after having him and being in the room, I was like, what a lot of moms experience, because you just had labor, you're exhausted, and people are showing up every 5 minutes to do a test, to check your blood pressure, to do all these different things. A lot of times you don't get the golden hour where you get to breastfeed and bond as a family. It's just immediately, we're just going to continue to be in your space and not get enough breaks to just be. Because if you would think about it, birth is a natural occurrence. Just like any animal has a baby, you're allowing them to be in that space and not really interfere. Yeah, it's just unfortunate. Were you physically restrained? I was physically restrained in the sense that because I had chosen pain medication, I was confined to the bed. If I had known before that you can labor before, you can labor at home, you can choose to not get medication prior so that you can understand what the contractions are, how to use that to push, how to use that by getting to different comfort measures and to different positioning so that things won't hurt. Because I had lower back pain, I had all these different things. And if I had been sitting on a birthing ball in my second and third trimester, if I had been eating dates to help ripen my cervix, if I had been doing, all the things under the sun, things would have been a little bit easier throughout this transition. I was exhausted, had not been drinking enough water, I was anemic, had not been eating enough healthy foods, had not been doing a whole bunch of things. And if support was there, I would have been better prepared for the birth itself. Childbirth, in a lot of cases, can be dangerous. I know that a lot of you that are already here know that currently the topic has been maternal and infant mortality in Black women and women of color, period. And the other thing that I think needs to be talked about is the fact that slavery created obstetrics. In short term, breaking that down to you, basically, the slaves that were no good for breeding, that had physical issues, these are the ones that we're experimenting on with no anesthesia so that we can learn different things about the human body, specifically the female body. And the ancestors that came before us sacrificed a lot for white people to profit and create this billion-dollar industry. And they came right on in and said midwifery was dirty and unclean, and this isn't the way to go. We're going to do things with medicine. We're going to do all these other things to make us seem so legit. So that's why you have patients, clients that don't trust their doula or birth worker. They don't trust their certified lactation consultant. They don't trust the people that really have their intentions at heart because they have a degree. That's a huge issue in the obstetrics and gynecology community, period. So yes, childbirth can be dangerous. Was your delivery a medical emergency? Yes, because I had preeclampsia and I was needing a blood transfusion. It was considered a medical emergency. Luckily, it wasn't such an emergency that I needed to have a C-section. My son's head was at an angle where it was just hitting my pelvic bone, and it took a lot of work to get him adjusted so that his head would just come straight through. It was like my contractions were so painful because he kept hitting my bone. And yeah, let's see. Did you have failed anesthesia? Yes, I did. The pain was hell, and I had worked so hard to like wait for the for them to come and for the second round because they were telling me that it wasn't it was a possibility I wouldn't be able to get it. And you're like, oh yes, I'm gonna get this medication. It's gonna help and heal me, and I'm gonna feel so much better. I can actually push. I got that pain medication, and it literally was just like putting water through my veins, like nothing happened. And I was still having to push, still having to like not run from the pain. And I remember like wanting to give up and it being so hard. And mind you, I had my grandmother there. She was born in 1942 and she has had children. And so this woman is telling me to, you asked for this, go ahead, push. It wasn't the, okay, baby, we finna get through this. It was like, no, you're here. We're going to push. This is what it is. And I love my grandmother. I felt like her words got me through it. I know that emotionally I was not ready for that tough love to get through that. But yes, I am thankful that I had my grandmother with me during my first birth, of course. Let's see. Did you think you and your baby would die? Not so much him. I felt like I would be the one that would be at risk of dying because of the fact that they kept, watching my blood pressure and like really stressing out about my levels and me feeling like, oh my God, if just like you would be in class cracking up with your friends and stuff, it's like if I do one more thing, I'm about to die. And it's like I can't really just be playing in this moment. But even during my pregnancy, when it was like, okay, I know that I don't want to live on this earth anymore, or I just want to like run away because my family is really sucking right now. I just want to like get away from this shit and start a whole new life. I felt like in those moments, it would just be me dying. I don't know how my mind was only seeing myself emotionally or spiritually shutting down. But in birth itself, I felt like, if something were to happen, it wouldn't be an effect on the baby. It would just be me. And thankfully, though, it was neither of us. Other risk factors in childbirth. So what is your history of depression, anxiety, trauma? So I don't know if anyone else experienced this, but, you have your family, whereas, like, I grew up with my grandparents, my mom, my aunt, all of their children, all of us kind of growing up as, like, a really big family. Even my other aunts and uncles and all those things on my dad's side, even though, like, my grandparents lived literally down the street from each other. Everyone was connected, and it was, all of that. So you can imagine if there is some generational curses, if there's some drama, if there's some trauma, if there's some like carried down just ways of thinking of life, there's going to be conflict there. And me being the person that I am, where it's like, I see the beauty in every individual person, and I want to be heard as a person. I want to be loved unconditionally, and I want to do that for other people. If everybody's not on that same wavelength, shit is going to be hard for a child, because you're raised to be this, bright, open-hearted being, and then everybody else is not following the things that they're teaching you. So a lot of that is a combination of why things unfold in life in general. And you just gotta find your way to heal through it. Find your support that will be there for you while you're going through that. And continue to just be and just be okay with the imperfections. The depression I experienced was from different things. I can think right now because I know my best friend is here in Houston. She lives in Louisiana currently, but that was something that was hard for me at 10, being separated from her and our friendship. And jumping straight into a Atascocita from the south side. Mind you, I'm from off of MLK and Airport, going straight to a Atascocita, predominantly white community, and had to make my own friends by just being an outspoken person and connecting with folks. And even in high school, I can remember, like, even though I may not have been the best friend of every person, of course, but like knowing that I was always with so many different groups of people, I can just mesh. But it took a lot for me to feel like that's what I needed to do. Even the person that I am now, I'm very open with talking about my personal experiences, because I don't want people to feel like, oh, I can do this to hurt you with this information, or I can't connect to you because you may be fake like everybody else. Like, I just want to be open so that somebody can either heal by, coming across me, or we together can have a relationship that fills my cup, So it took a lot to get there, because I had depression in high school. Kid Cudi, if you know Kid Cudi, that was like a huge person that I connected with, and he's not even somebody in my actual life circle. He's an artist. And, music carried me, art carried me, even now. And I experienced the same issues like that I have had with my parents, that I've had with just society as a whole, and understanding where I belong, and whatever outside feelings, like, why don't I look this way? Why don't I fit in with this? Why am I so different? All of those things can trigger depression. I have felt anxiety just from the things that I have been taught as far as like love language, and like understanding that the shoe is going to drop, or feeling like, men are always there to hurt you. They're going to leave you. All kind of stuff that I've learned that we could for sure talk about on and on. But the contributing things have created the depression. Here I am having a child, and I feel like everyone around me felt that, okay, you're 19, you're supposed to already be, on your path to success in my mind, and what I think success looks like. And you're not doing that, and I feel nothing but, disdain. I feel, like, you should be this way. So it feels like failure. And, yeah. Deciding to do my own thing amidst that, because a lot of times when it comes to your family, you will take their opinions as the gospel. You're going to believe that that is the reason why you should make decisions. Like, I'm not going to pursue this thing, or I'm not going to dress this way, or I'm not going to raise my child this way, because they're going to make a comment, or they're going to be hostile to you if you decide to do whatever. Like, I can remember the fact that I allowed my child to take naps, and that'd be a whole thing. Or I wanted to do placenta encapsulation. It's like, oh, we don't do that. It's so many different ways that anxiety can come about, because you know how someone's going to respond to you. Yeah, it's a whole umbrella. of contributing factors and why even now I experience anxiety. Relationships. How did it affect your relationship with others by having a child? So I think the intuitive feeling I felt was to just basically cut things down or cut things off. So I remember like I was kind of embarrassed to say that I had a child. So it was kind of like I didn't really just want to talk about it because my peers are in college. My peers are like doing other things, which later on down the road I'm realizing they're having degrees and they're working in the same places that I'm working, making the same pay that I'm making. So why, would I feel ashamed, you know? But I didn't want to like really project my life onto any social media because I felt like I don't want things to look a certain way when they're not. So I cut all of that off. I just pretty much stopped posting. I stopped using it for that. If I was on it, it would just be to look at something that's funny. But for the most part, and even later on down the road where there was like financial hardship where I couldn't afford a phone to be on, I didn't have time to really just be on anything. So that's why, this pandemic right now in 2020 doesn't really faze me because I know what it's like not having your lights on, or I know what it's like not having food in the pantry, or whatever. Like I'm used to things not always being there, so it's not hard for me to be away from something. Um, my relationship with my partner um, has gone down. It's so many different aspects to it because we met in high school, of course, um, and we were always long distance, and we are living together for the first time with a child, and even now, it's been challenging too because you have to kind of fight through the comments of family, of outside people, because they assume, oh, that's your husband, right? Or that's your spouse, and oh, y'all are common law, right? To like really justify it in their mind, and they'll be like, so when are you gonna get married? Kids mean a family now, so you gonna go ahead and get married? Like people from either side of our family have made comments, not really knowing that they don't really support what we do by the words that come out of their mouth. We'll swear up and down they love us and we believe that they love us, but they just don't know how because they're used to the mind frame that people go through to really justify stuff, like the fact that we work jobs to justify living. So my relationship has always kind of felt like there will be instances where, especially during the childbirth phase, it was like, is he coming to the birth? Knowing good and damn well he was driving me to all the appointments. He was either, and if he wasn't, if he was at work, we were talking about it. He was, setting things up for us to live on our own and do things how we want to do them. But it would be like because I'm away and I'm hearing all of these outside thoughts, that became the gospel. That became the actual mindset. So there would be tension that I'm bringing into the relationship. And yeah. Now in 2020, we are getting past a lot of that because I'm actually accepting my relationship and not really worrying about outside people. It's what I decide my life is. It's what I decide my relationship and my love and our children are. So nobody else matters. How did birth affect your relationship with your baby? So with Greyson, as I said before, he felt like a complete stranger. Like he was someone that was entered in, and it was like I needed to just make sure that I did not mess this up, and I need to just figure out how to get used to him and just figure out how to, do the different things. I was very curious about what it was, that I wanted to do with him. Like, what type of schedule am I going to want to do? And some of the things were interesting to me. It took a little minute in the beginning for me to feel like, oh, this is my baby, and like, I love him. But at the same time, I didn't want him to go out of the house. I didn't want anyone on the outside interfering. It was like, okay, you come in and visit, and then you just kind of dip and allow me to have this space with my baby. So obviously my physical, my intuitive energy was there for him, but me logically and thinking on the human level, it was just kind of like, oh, how do I do this perfectly and not in a way that I feel like I'm going to screw him up? Over time, I would say now, just kind of reflecting, because this week has kind of been a focus on my son, is just that I think he's going to do what he wants to do anyway. And yeah, it's I can't control everything. He's learned so much from me, and I can see how smart he is. Of course, every parent feels that way. I can see how inquisitive he is, how caring he is, and I think because of the depression, because of the emotions I had in the womb and outward, he is a very loving person. Like, he's very aware of comforting someone when they are down, and asking questions to learn things, and that's what I appreciate about my son. And the fact that I'm always there to like comfort him, so it's kind of like him reciprocating the things that I give back. Let me see. Is it me? I don't get any audio. Can you guys hear me? Or have y'all been staring at me this whole time? Because I saw some comments which let me know that y'all can hear. Hopefully. Y'all say something. Okay. All right. Thank you, Lonnie. How did it affect your relationship with yourself? So, I say my physical appearance changed. Yay! I love you, Auntie. My feelings with myself, it was like I kind of went into a very like closed up space because I needed to figure out where I was gonna go, how I was gonna take care of this child, what I was gonna do for self. I don't think there was enough time for me to really just care for my postpartum body, to really embrace the birth that I went through, because afterwards I ended up developing a infection in my kidneys, and I was in so much pain. It felt like I was dying. And I had my son in October, so it was really cold that year, and or at least in my mom's house, like she keeps it super cold in the apartment. And so as the winter kind of progressed and things like that, and I was in recovery, I was in so much pain and had developed that infection. Went to the ER and had found out it was because I was not drinking enough water. And there was so much pressure I had put on myself to breastfeed, and I did not want my mom to, keep pushing formula or, and when you breastfeed for the first time, okay, and everybody else in your house or in your family line have not breastfed, that is one of the biggest traps to not be successful at breastfeeding. I have met some beautiful ladies that have created a group, an organization, through the fact that they were breastfeeding together, but I didn't get that. It was like I was just doing this alone, and any outside support wasn't doing enough. I was dealing with a time where we didn't have a pandemic, and my insurance covers virtual therapy. Like, I didn't get to have that with my son, with that pregnancy. And so it was a lot that I didn't necessarily get from my home life and from the outside. So I was just kind of figuring it out on my own. I was self-diagnosing, self-helping to the best of my ability. I can remember just solely focusing on the imminent issues and, my child, and not really giving into myself, which I can say now in 2020, or now, right, as a mom of 2 children, I have finally opened up to giving myself space to do things that make me happy, to connect with other people, other individuals that are on my same path, so that we can bond and I get that sisterhood that I've been looking for and been needing to kind of uplift me. Were you able to talk about your birth? in situations where people were kind of talking to me about their experience, sometimes I would bring up my situation because, like, 2 years ago, the past 2 years, I had been a union organizer. I was fighting for people's rights, and I was very open about my predicament so that people could see the fact that jobs, literally everything that is connected to slavery, is a setup for failure. So, I was talking about how the societal structures um, have made it hard for people to not have a living wage higher than $15 an hour. So you can imagine the things that I was talking about, and I did get to talk about my birth in some instances, but where there was space, like, Stephanie, tell me about your birth and, like, what emotions came up for you in this situation or that. I didn't necessarily have somebody asking me that. I felt like in my support space, um, the only times that I would kind of mention, like, maybe discomfort or, my situation at home would be with my partner or with a friend. Like, I would call people randomly, whenever things were just really, really hard. I would call once every, like, few months or, like, once every year or something like that. Like, hey, I'm going through this issue. And they would give me their advice, and that would be it. And then over time, I stopped doing that because I didn't want to just put my energy onto other people. Fast forward to the work I started doing, like, with the union and now with birth work, it's okay for me to talk about my experience because they're going through that and they need validation and they need someone to that actually can connect on that level. Um, let's see. Breastfeeding. Did you get to go off? Did you start rough with breastfeeding? Is the question. Yeah, it was hard because they offer formula in the hospital. I had lactation consultants, but they immediately gave me nipple shields. It was kind of like, here you go, try this. I thought something was wrong with my nips. I thought it was like, I'm not built to do it, but I was I was good at it. Um, I found out later down the road, but the pump that I had that I got from Wick, um, was an old school Medela. It was super noisy. It was super painful. It kept the baby up, which kept my mom up. So it was like, no. I eventually gave up because I was exhausted. I didn't sleep or get a full night's rest until a few weeks after birth, which is common for a lot of moms because it's like you're still on the go. Like, you got to just keep it pushing. Um, so yeah, my breastfeeding journey with my son lasted until he was about 4 months. And the entire time, I think I was doing combo feeding. I wanted to use a supplementing formula that's supposed to mimic breastfeeding, but was still dairy formula. I wanted to use that. It was like, no, don't use that because that's not going to be sustaining enough. Um, there was like questions on how long I wanted to do breast milk, that I should do cereal in the bottle, I should do cereal just in a bowl. Just all kind of stuff was being thrown at me because there was concern for how he was getting fed or sleeping enough or whatever the case. Um, what help did you receive during your birth at the hospital and at home? So at the hospital, my partner stayed the entire time, and then he stayed with us at my mom's home for, like, I want to say a good month. He was there during the recovery. Um, what was crazy was I think my mom and my partner, like, lost their jobs at the same time or something like that. So it was like I had them there, but of course under circumstances that were hard. Um, at home, it was more of me feeling like I needed to still try to keep up and do stuff around the house, but that birth had been so painful. Even though I wanted to, like, get around and do a lot of stuff, I was still kind of confined to the bed. Um, fear and pain. So, what pain did you feel? So, I had felt the overwhelming pain of the tearing, the stitching, and just the feelings that you feel when your uterus contracts down to size, because it went from literally a watermelon down to avocado. So That's painful. Breastfeeding and getting used to your nipples being latched onto on a habitual basis was painful. Um, Sleeplessness, as I said before, that in itself can be painful because you want to sleep and you want to, actually rest. But it would be like one of us is nudging the other to wake up and deal with the baby, and the other person getting, an extra 30 minutes or an extra hour to sleep. And so I remember that being a constant. Or sometimes I would feel like I overslept because my partner gave me way longer to sleep or something like that. And I always felt like, oh, I need to just get up and tend to the baby and chores or whatever the case. Um, the road to recovery. So, how did you process your experience? So, as I said before, I had tried to get health insurance that I had at the time. You have to pay very expensive out of pocket costs to be seen and talked to about your problems for 1 hour, 30 minutes, whatever. So I eventually gave that up and started to just either confide in friends, um, or just keep it in and deal with the stuff in my mind and just keep it pushing until I got to the next situation. Um, how did you get to know your baby? So I used to just kind of watch him a lot. It would be like bath time, um, playtime. I would kind of like just do different stuff with him. I started a calendar where I was like taking pictures of him. I never finished it, but I did a whole photo shoot thing. I remember taking him to church. There was a church near my mom's apartment. I ended up connecting to that church through a couple coworkers when I was working at Chick-fil-A, and it created a whole community. And even though, I may not necessarily agree with, you know, the certain ways that religion, whatever it is, can try to control you, if it's not really there to teach you and provide, explanations of love. Outside of that, in the ways that religion has been used in racism, I tried to like steer clear. But this church gave me, community, and they would give me things without me asking. Like they would see if I needed clothes for my kid or whatever the case. Like I had that with him. I would take him and stuff, and then when I didn't want to do that, I would, whenever I'll be able to go out, I would go with him and take him to go see my grandparents and other family when I could. But when we were home, it was like just me watching TV with him, talking, and over time I just fell in love, and it was just like, this is my baby, and I'm so wrapped up in taking a million pictures and just being in his essence. So over time, I got to get into the flow of being his mom. Um, let's see. How did your partner feel during the birth? What ways did he respond after? I felt like in the birth, he was very, beforehand, it kind of seemed like, oh, is he going to be nervous about like what's going to happen? Because we did take a childbirth class together. And there he did not waver in the ways that he held my hand, he was comforting me, he was like, talking to me and stuff like that. Because as I said, my parents were there. My parents are not together. And my grandma was there. So it was like tension. It was like craziness. It was funny moments. It was just this whole mess. But I remember him being there to the best of his ability. And he felt like, because he's the type of person that doesn't like needles. He doesn't like all these other things. And so he really held it together and watched the entire birth. He helped hold my hand, hold my legs, whatever. Like, he was involved. He videoed. He really does everything. So I remember in that moment that I never felt like he didn't do enough, because he did what he could with what he had, just like I did, which is strange because I didn't really give myself the credit as much as I was kind of giving to him, maybe because people always knock him. But I don't know. I feel like he did really well. Afterwards, it was kind of still that stress of like, is our relationship going to be great? Are we going to, succeed and, meet these expectations that other people have for us. And, how are things going to flow? Because we stayed with his family for a little while before we moved into our own place. Like, what's that going to be like? And, you know, just so many different things. And we were on two different wavelengths, and there was issues down the road. But in that period of time of me freshly having a baby and like him being there to support me at my mom's home, it was like, he was open to doing stuff. I think that he was still just kind of new and wanting to, just get to know this baby and, just getting used to it all. I felt like he was pretty much in the same boat as me. How have you forgiven yourself? So 5 years later, I decided to go ahead and forgive myself. I guess through the work that I have done between this time shows a lot about how I want to be cared for by the ways that I care for others. Specifically, I am currently going to therapy. I have like a virtual therapist, and it's been great. Sometimes I feel like, sometimes she gives me homework and it's just like, okay, I need to work on these things, but I'm busy. Or a lot of times she reflects things to me that I feel like are worth talking about that I may not have noticed. Sometimes she validates me and makes me feel empowered. So I would say that that is the way that I am forgiving myself by healing. I am giving myself space to do things that I want to do and pursue my dreams because I deserve to try. That's a way that I have given back to myself. And when I see something interesting that I want to do or something that I want to buy for myself, because I've done that plenty times where I'm a window shopper. Like, I like to look at stuff. I don't always get things for myself, even if I have the money, even if I have like enough to go around. Like, I will go ahead and purchase that. I will go ahead and like do whatever. That's why I got a mindset coach, Lonnie, my beautiful coach. I recently did a facial. I have joined a community garden, which that has been such a beautiful experience. Yeah, those are some ways that I have forgiven myself. What have you learned in your 5 years of raising Greyson? That you are not your mother, your mother's mother, and whoever else came before. You are imperfect, and that makes you just as good as everybody else. Greyson is only, a kid, and he's going to do what he's going to do. You just have to accept that. I have literally 2 minutes left. So I'm going to end it in 2 minutes, and I will finish this up in the next live just to give y'all an idea of the fact that I have a lot of content. I guess in these last 2 minutes, I want to go ahead and let you guys know that this Rose Golden Hour series is going to be weekly, every Wednesday at 6 to 7 p.m. Central. As I said before, I'm in Houston, Texas, and yeah, I am excited to be a part of this. This was a dream that I had, like just an idea, and I'm finally executing it. I love you too, Melanie. Yeah, so if you got the time when I'm airing it or afterwards, definitely check it out. If you felt like this resonated with you, go ahead and share it, promote my Black business, or comment on my latest post and tell me how it impacted you based on the words that I got to share. Yeah, I'm grateful. I'm super happy. I'm excited to experience my son's birthday tomorrow. And I am thankful for the opportunities that he has given me by choosing me to be his mom. And yeah, that's it. Love you guys. Thank you.